Meet Professor Dr. PSN Rao, engineer, architect, and one of the biggest names in urban planning in the country today. To conclude, I have to ask you this question, Professor Dr. PSN Rao, because you were the chair for Delhi Urban Arts Commission. Vikas or Virasat?
विरासत के साथ विकास होना चाहिए. Forget your past and only go to the future. India has a holy past, and India has layers and layers of built heritage. Along with other.
Which technologies are setting the gold standard in Indian real estate construction? If there was one thing RERA could do better, or one category that RERA could include in its ambit, a stellar urban infrastructure project in the country. So what do you opt for, increasing urbanization or counter-urbanization? How many of us actually know what is FAR? Is it the same as FSI? A builder recently shared with me how majority of the employees in his own company are stumped when it comes to the basic real estate terminologies. Now that is the state of affairs of people selling real estate. Imagine the plight of an ordinary layperson during property purchase when he's bombarded with terminologies like carpet area, built-up area, super built-up area. It leaves him a little baffled and slightly overwhelmed. What do you do when you want to get your basics right? Consult a teacher, right? Today's podcast is a masterclass on the basics of real estate, and we have requested an academic leader to dispel the doubts. He's someone who rose the ranks from being a research associate to becoming the professor, director, and currently dean of one of the most prestigious architecture schools in the country. Meet Professor Dr. PSN Rao, engineer, architect, and one of the biggest names in urban planning in the country today. He dons several hats and has chaired various committees. The chairperson of Delhi Urban Arts Commission. He was chairperson, jury, Central Vista Redevelopment, New Parliament Building. Professor Rao, the problem with super achievers like you is that people like me don't know where to start. I thought I'll start with the very basics, and I've divided the podcast into two segments. And the first is about breaking the jargons and getting the basics in place. And while the second half, we could focus on the urban planning bit. A lot of terms, Professor Dr. Rao, tend to intimidate the home buyer. You know, things like what is FAR and is it any different from FSI? Why don't you dispel this doubt?
Sure. I'll put it in simple words so that the common man can also consume. Basically, FAR and FSI are one and the same. FAR stands for floor area ratio, and FSI stands for floor space index. In the state of Maharashtra, floor space index or FSI is in use, whereas in Delhi and other parts of the country, we use the term floor area ratio or FAR. So, for example, so essentially, what is FAR or FSI? Because they essentially mean the same. It is the amount of built-up that you can place on a plot of land. So, let's say there is a plot of land, maybe a 300 square yard plot. Okay, so 300 square yards would be 30 feet by 90 feet. So that is 2,700 square feet.
Yes.
So if you say the FSI is 1.5, so 2,700 square feet of land area multiplied by 1.5. That is the amount of built-up space that you can put on that plot. But if this is in Maharashtra, but if it is in Delhi, then you would use the term FAR. So instead of saying 1.5, here you say 150. So whether it is 150 here or 1.5 there, essentially it is 1.5 times.
So it is the total
it is the amount of square feet that you can build. The amount of square feet that you can build on a plot of land. That is FAR or FSI, and it is as simple as that. And different states use.
So, and what is the tangible impact it has on me as a buyer? I would know the number of floors if I know what is the FAR.
So if you are an individual buyer, and if you purchased a plot, and if you would know what is the FAR or the FSI that's permitted on your plot, then you will know that on this plot I can build so much.
Okay.
Similarly, if there is a developer and he purchases 2 acres of land or 3 acres of land, then he has to know what is the FAR or the FSI, so that he will know that this is what I can build here. So he will get an idea that, okay, I can get so many apartments or so much amount of commercial space. And also sometimes in our country, there is something called a base FAR or a base FSI, which is something which comes with every plot. But then there is something that is called a purchasable FSI or a purchasable FAR. So in certain situations, you can pay some money, and then if you want to build more, then the government has a provision that you can purchase some more FAR or FSI and you can build more.
Okay, fantastic. It's a term currently more probably relevant to the industry than the layperson. Of course, in certain ways, still relevant to him in knowing how high the building is going to be.
Yeah, if you are going to build on a plot, if you have your own plot.
Yes.
In Gurgaon, if you have a 500 square yard plot, so you would like to know what is the FSI.
Yes.
So you will know that, okay, I can build about 6,000 square feet on my plot. 6,000 square feet is, okay, a very decent bungalow that you can get. How do you get that idea? It is essentially based on this. So always, whether it's an individual or a developer, they always want to build more, either because they want to sell more, or as an individual, you would like to have a more luxurious accommodation.
So the carpet area is where the carpet is laid out, as the name suggests. But what about the built-up area, the super built-up area? What is it that really matters and the buyer should watch out for?
Yeah. So these are also terminologies which the common buyer should really know, because architects would know all these.
Yeah.
So that's what you actually get and you directly enjoy. That is something which perhaps you could even measure or with whatever equipment you have. But when you talk about built-up area, then you're also including the walls. And if you're talking about a super built-up area, then you're also looking at the common spaces. Maybe there's a common lobby and other spaces involved. You would include that also. So quite often, there are some builders who would say that you're getting 1400 square feet. So whether it's a carpet area or whether it's a super built-up area, you're always confused, and sometimes you think that 1400 is a reasonably good space, but that's not the
carpet area.
That's actually the super built-up area. So in that there are so many things which are included. So when you actually come inside your home, the sizes of the rooms are much less, and the area that you actually get is much less. So therefore you need to be very careful when you are told, when you go to a property mela, or you're talking to a developer, or you open a website and you look at it, what is the carpet area is what you need to really look at.
And the grand total and the sum of carpet area plus the walls plus the amenities is super built-up area, which is used in marketing flyers of most real estate.
Yeah, so often they say that 1800 SFT flat and all, but what you're actually getting is much less. So you better check, is it the super built-up area, is it the built-up area, is it the carpet area, and only then you make an informed choice.
Which are the documents that I should check as a home buyer, and what are the right questions for a buyer to be asking a builder?
So for most of us, the biggest expenditure in our life is the apartment that we purchase. We buy so many things in our lives, but then the only one time perhaps and major lumpy investment that we are making is an apartment or a plot of land or a building, a bungalow. So we need to ask as many questions as possible till the seller is tired, because you want to be very sure, because you are spending a couple of crores of rupees of your hard-earned money.
Yes.
And you have to be very sure, and moreover, unlike a mobile phone or a car or something like that, which is made in a factory where there are automated processes and there are checks and balances, real estate is a very disorganized industry in many parts of the world, in India as well. And therefore, you need to know several things. Firstly, the ownership of the land. Whom does the land belong to? Then there are a series of approvals that one needs to take. There could be 40, 50, 60, 70 approvals, depending upon where it is located and so on. It is located close to a water body, so you need a coastal regulation zone. You could be close to a river, or you could be close to a canal. There could be, of course, the municipal plan sanctions. What is the master plan provision? What is the land use? What is the FAR or FSI? And have they built it as per that, or have they made any violations? Maybe at a later date could be demolished, and you will be at a loss. And in many places there are water bodies which are filled up, and on that land the apartments are constructed. So there are forever there are 100 things which one needs to look at, and therefore you have to be very careful when you make this purchase, because firstly it is not something that you can discard. There are many things that we buy which are not very expensive. So,
Yes.
So if it is not functioning properly, you can afford to throw it away and then go and buy once again. But here you can't afford to do that. So you have to be absolutely very clear. So quite often it is necessary for you to show all these documents to an advocate, so that there is something called a title verification. So the advocate will look at these documents. To whom does the land belong to? Who has sold it to whom, and who has the builder purchased it from? Has he taken? What are all the approvals that one need to take? Have you taken all these? So today you have this body called the Real Estate Regulatory Authority,
RERA.
and RERA. So it is only after all those approvals are made that you can upload the project on the RERA website. So please go to the RERA website and see whether this particular project has got a RERA approval or not. So that will, because it's really very difficult for a purchaser to have this understanding and look at all those things. So look at the RERA website. If it is mentioned there, then certainly a lot of your headache is already taken care of.
Okay, nice. RERA is ultimately the consumer or the home buyer's friend, and as you said, Professor Dr. Rao mentioned, that you don't need to be apologetic about asking as many questions as you want till the time you are satisfied. So which are the red flags that one should watch out in the builder-buyer agreement?
Yeah, again, in a builder-buyer agreement, it's always better to show it to your advocate, so that the builder-buyer agreement is an agreement between the builder and the buyer. So what is the builder giving? What are his liabilities? And on the other hand, what are your liabilities and your responsibilities? So he has to build, and at every stage you need to make some payment, and then finally he has to hand over at a particular date. And then what are the specifications that he is going to give you, whether it's flooring or walling or roofing or the electricals and all these things. So if they are very vague, then obviously he could shortchange you. So there are several clauses that you need to look at. So it is always good to show it to your advocate and see if all the provisions are taken care of in the builder-buyer.
So how does one gauge the quality of construction of a building, and how does one differentiate a good quality building from a bad quality building?
Extremely difficult question, in the sense that it's really very difficult for one to assess the quality of a building because you don't know what has gone into it. So in the absence of that, how do you assess the quality? Because unlike in other manufactured products like a motor car or a mobile telephone, there is no guarantee here. It's not built on an assembly line with mechanized processes. You have construction workers and you have materials. Therefore, at various levels, there have to be quality checks. So one way of doing it is that you look at the reputed brand name, and then you can assure yourself that, well, if it is a product that has been developed by X, Y or Z, you know that they've already built 100 apartments or 25 projects, and they're well known and they've been in the industry for the last 40 years, and maybe your friends and relatives would have already purchased from them, and therefore they have used good material. You can of course look at the specifications, whether they've used copper wiring, whether they're using a particular brand for the let's say the fittings and the fixtures in the toilets, and whether they're using Italian marble or whatever, what kind of timber they're using and so on. Maybe an architect who is familiar with the materials. you can take him and you can get his advice. By looking at the building itself, a trained eye can also make out, but then it's really very difficult.
I understand.
Because in our country, we don't have a quality check. The municipal laws, they only look at the front setback, the rear setback, the FAR or the FSI. Have you made any violations? Only those things are looked at. Nobody looks at whether you used X diameter bar or Y diameter bar. So quality is extremely important. It's not something that you can do away with so easily. So therefore, it is very important to see what has actually gone into it, what materials have used, what specifications have been used, and whether that's a good specification or not, who's going to tell you. So you need an architect's advice on this.
Which technologies are setting the gold standard in Indian real estate construction? You know, we hear of a lot of names dropping like Mivan construction, 3D designing. Do they only lead to speedier construction, or does it have an impact on the quality of real estate? So in real tangible terms, what is it that I as a consumer should know about the technology of construction of a particular project in which I have invested in?
Yeah. So 3D printing is still very new in our country. It is not yet really taken off. It is being used in a very, very rudimentary fashion. In 3D printing, the quality of the concrete is preset once, and then the concrete is poured.
So speeds up the construction time.
Speeds up the construction, and there is also a quality check possible.
Okay.
But there are various industrialized methods of constructing. Prefabricated buildings have been put in place in various cities, in various projects. So in a prefabricated building, the advantage is that the quality of the cement and the quality of the steel and the curing of the concrete, all these processes of manufacturing the building, many of these are mechanized and automated. It's done in a factory. Most of the components are all made in the factory, and then it's only the assembly that's done at site. So therefore quality check is much better here.
I see.
Even the kind of water that you use, the quality of the water that you use in the construction is also extremely important, so that it doesn't corrode the steel that is there inside and so on.
So let's focus on infrastructure development. As a home buyer, we are caught up with situations where the project has been delivered, but the infrastructure links have not been established. Dwarka Expressway is a case in point, which is like 17 years behind timelines. And so what is more important for India, housing development or infrastructure development, according to you?
Housing development is something which happens in a very controlled manner, whereas infrastructure development is something which has to happen in the common areas, the roads, the parks, the sewer lines, the drainage systems, the electricity. All that has to be done by the civic authorities, by the agencies, by the government. So both are important, because a very expensive condominium is no good if you come out of that and then you don't have proper roads, or you don't have water coming regularly, so you're buying tankers and tankers of water, perhaps even on a daily basis, or there's no garbage collection system. So what is the big deal? You spend 5 crores in purchasing an apartment, and then you wait for 20 years for the sewer lines and for the garbage system and other things to fall in place. So both are equally important. Both have to be there. The building is, of course, and within the 4 walls of the condominium, things are all within our control. So we will all ensure as a resident welfare association that our buildings are well built and well maintained, painted. We maintain our gardens and everything neat and clean. But the moment you come out, because the garbage has to be taken out somewhere, the sewage has to go out somewhere, and roads are all flooded these days because there's no drainage. The roads themselves are so bad that you have a very, very bumpy rough ride on the...
And 20 minutes of rainfall in Gurugram, and we saw what Millennium City was
so
made up
now
of.
I think people have finally woken up, and there is some proposal for a huge amount of money has been allocated recently for drainage in Gurugram, for instance. In the earlier days, when land acquisition was happening on a large scale, one would first acquire all the land, put the infrastructure in place, and then allot the plots of land either to the individuals or to the cooperative societies or to the real estate developers, and then they would only have to plug and play.
And that's a great model.
That's a great model. Like in Navi Mumbai, like in Noida, Greater Noida,
Absolutely.
in many places.
Yeah.
But ever since the land acquisition legislation has been completely changed, doing large-scale land development has become extremely difficult. Today, housing development across the country is in the hands of the real estate developers, and real estate developers can only do within their plot of land. So what happens to the urban commons? By urban commons, I mean the roads, the drainage, the garbage, the parks and other facilities which are the commons. There the government has to play a role.
Absolutely.
So in the Gurgaon language, perhaps we call it as the external infrastructure. The infrastructure is never in place. Only the internal infrastructure is in place. So both are equally important.
Absolutely. From development to redevelopment, like homes require renovation, lifts require replacement, buildings require redevelopment. Now, 78 years of independence and counting, what is it that India requires right now, development or redevelopment?
We require both actually, because India is a growing demography, population is growing by leaps and bounds, and therefore we need a lot of new housing to happen. Not only housing but all the other appurtenant infrastructures. You need schools, you need colleges, you need hospitals, you need a variety of other infrastructure as well.
True. Yeah.
But then there are, but can you keep spreading the cities so much that you start traveling very long distances? That's a big question now. And currently that's happening in many places, that we are leapfrogging, and there's a lot of suburbanization that's happening, and we are traveling very long distances. So ideally we should have a compact. So how do you have a compact development where you have high density living, and high density can also come by high rise, but not necessarily. At the same time, there are many low density areas in the existing cities which can be redeveloped, because in the yesteryears, when land was not at a premium, we were developing with a very low density. So today, those low density areas are undergoing redevelopment. This is happening in many parts of the country, and the inner city areas are all getting redensified. So redensification is necessary so that you use the same roads, and where there was only one building on a plot, you have much more now. So higher FAR is being permitted in many places. There is also something called a transit-oriented development. So all along the metro corridors or major roads, we are permitting a higher purchasable FAR so that one can have more intense development.
So the next segment is a very interesting segment. It's a rapid fire round,
Sure.
and it's my secret weapon to cover more ground without wandering into the winding lanes of political correctness. So here is your chance, Dr. Rao, to be as snappy and as straightforward as you choose to be, with moderate to short length responses. So can we start this segment, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead.
One city you think is a model for urban planning?
When you see, urban planning itself has undergone a lot of transformation. At one time, we thought that Chandigarh was a good model. But then today, Chandigarh, when we look at it, is very widely spread out. It is very low density, and so one has to walk long distances, or you have to take out your vehicle all the time. So it's more of a vehicle oriented rather than a
Public transport.
walkable city or a public transport city. So in India, really, we don't have any city which is an ideal urban planning model. Therefore, there are many cities in Europe, particularly, where you have multimodal transportation choices and parking choices, and you can walk long distances. There are many cities in Europe which are the way we should really be building. Build compact, build intimate live spaces, where the human values can be better explored, and not having very wide avenues and depending all the time on a car, and so those cities are not very safe also.
Yeah, and we in India, we take out a car at the drop of the hat, and
even to
the
purchase,
same Indians, when we go to Europe, we use the public transportation with equal verve and
correct.
the same alacrity. One policy that has made a huge impact to urban planning in India.
I would say RERA to a certain extent. It's a law, it's not really a policy. RERA is a good piece of legislation, but I would like a lot of things to change in RERA.
Okay.
Because it is only touched a part of the problem. RERA is good. Most states in India now have affordable housing policies, which are also quite good. So if you are looking at a policy that way, TOD and TDR, these are two policies which the government of India is promoting, and both these policies are good. And we are also promoting what is called riverfront cities. Most of our cities have got water bodies.
Absolutely.
And we have completely neglected these water bodies.
Absolutely.
So if you can develop these water bodies in a nice and aesthetic manner, then city living can be more joyous.
One urban planning regulation you would like to change?
We need to bring about a lot of changes in our legislation. We need legislation because legislation is what controls. But then legislation should also promote. It should not only control, but it should also promote. And it should promote the right kind of development.
Right.
And it should also be such that it ensures quality. RERA, I said, because since this is a real estate segment, I would focus more on RERA. RERA is primarily focusing at the primary market, not focusing at the secondary market at all.
True.
So the real estate brokers only in the primary market are to register themselves, and in the secondary market is where the major sales are happening. Those are not looked at all.
That's a very, very relevant point.
Number two is in RERA, when the customers go and complain to the tribunal, the tribunal passes an order, but then in most of the cases, the order is rarely executed. And if the order is not executed and the developer is not coughed up that money, then what happens next? That is a grey area where there are thousands of complaints which are theoretically addressed as per the law, but the relief has not been received by the
aggrieved party, the home buyer.
Party. Okay. So that last mile connectivity in RERA is totally missing.
Okay.
And that is a
and the secondary market transaction is also a point, pain point that needs to be addressed. Smart cities or sustainable cities, what do you vote for?
Yeah, so I would not like to call it versus, because a sustainable city is actually a smart city. If a city is not sustainable, then it's not smart. So smart is not just IT. Smart is where you are making optimum utilization of the resources, whether it is water, whether it is waste, whether it is the trees and the plants and the rivers and the water bodies and the lakes, everything. So a city has to be sustainable, and only then we are smart.
Okay, well said.
And of course, IT technology, you can use technology at various levels to control traffic, to control water, to control street lighting, garbage. There are so many applications of IT, but only IT applications will not make a city.
Vertical growth or horizontal expansion for Indian cities?
Indian cities, I don't think horizontal expansion is really the answer, because very fertile agricultural land is being swallowed by horizontal development. And our cities are going very, very expansive, and that is leading to long distance travels by vehicles in the absence of public transport, and that's not really required. So I think we need to have more compact cities, and in a more compact city you can better put your public transportation. There is absolutely no need for you to take out your car for everything.
Absolutely.
Cities should be walkable.
Walkable.
Mobility choices should be wide and varied, and cities should be neat, clean, aesthetically pleasing, so that it's a joy to walk on the street.
Affordable housing or luxury housing, what should be the focus?
India's focus should absolutely be on affordable housing. Unfortunately, we are not really focusing there, and we are all the time making more and more very, very expensive houses. Expensive houses are required, but in very small numbers. But what happens to the affordable segment? I think more incentives have to be given in the affordable housing sector, whether it's at the national level, whether it's at the state government level, or whether it's at the local government level.
Correct.
We have a 3-tier governmental system. At all these systems, we need to provide extensive incentive framework. Whether it can be fiscal, it can be whatever, so that more developers can come into the affordable sector and do that kind of housing.
I hope policy makers are is listening intently to this suggestion, affordable housing can become a reality, not just a dream, if it is incentivized for the developer. Green spaces or high density housing, what would you prioritize?
High density housing, a judicious mix of high density housing and green spaces. I think we can't really afford to develop more and more Lutyens Delhi kind of 2-acre bungalows. Just not possible. Land is very scarce and we have to use land minimally.
So if there was one thing that RERA could do better, in fact you answered it, so let me just tweak it a bit and say that if there was one category that RERA could include in its ambit, what would that category be?
Yeah, RERA should ensure that all these orders are fully implemented.
Yeah.
In many cases, they are leaving the implementation to the district magistrate.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, very ridiculous. District magistrate has got no business to get into real estate.
Yeah.
So it is the real estate tribunal which should ensure that this is implemented, and if it is not implemented, then the developer should be put behind bars for this. Unless and until you take strict measures,
yeah.
Today the developers are going on almost a free ride, even after RERA actually.
Yeah.
So therefore, unless and until you have a very strict system and put the fear into the minds of these people, the common man's entire life savings
yes.
are just withered away, and then you spend the rest of your life only fighting these battles. I mean, why should it happen that way?
The laws are there, but the implementation is where a lot needs to be done.
Absolutely.
So the biggest challenge in urban planning today in India, according to you?
Yeah, there are many challenges. Urban planning is to do a lot with the urban commons, because as developers we can only do so much and no further. We have control only within our plot of land. It could be a 5-acre plot, it could be a 10-acre plot, it could be a small township, but nothing beyond. But urban planning is related to cities. So you want to put a metro system in the city, you want to take care of your lakes, you want to develop large parks, maybe an urban forest, maybe a sewer system, maybe the public drainage system. These things are all conspicuous by their absence in our Indian cities. So the framework of the government, whether it is a Jal board or a Jal Sansthan or a municipal body, these are all highly disorganized, lack of professional capacities, and there's no accountability and complete lack of professionalism in these bodies.
And vision, overall vision also.
Yeah, so they're all working with absolutely no seriousness and only doing firefighting when there is a flood. So how do you pump out the water is their concern, rather than ensuring that the flood doesn't happen in the first place.
A stellar urban infrastructure project in the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Delhi Metro, they can't be anything better than that. The Delhi Metro is probably the best thing that has happened to this large megalopolis, if I may call it.
So what do you opt for? Increasing urbanization or counter-urbanization?
Yeah, we need to focus a lot on small towns. Small towns life is not as exciting as the big city. Therefore, you need to make investments in small towns, and I think the Tier 2 and Tier 3 towns are catching up. But then the government should focus by investing more on these areas. So have more airports and more hospitals and colleges and other facilities in these smaller areas, so that the focus shifts from these big 4 or the big 6, the big 7 or 8 cities of the country
towards the neglected hinterland.
Yeah, so you need to focus more on the smaller towns.
And finally, because you were chairing the Delhi Urban Arts Commission, I have to ask you this: Vikas or Virasat? What would you choose?
Choosing one or the other is very difficult. We need Virasat ke saath vikas hona chahiye.
Right.
You can't forget your past and only go into the future. India has a hoary past, and India has layers and layers of built heritage along with other elements of heritage. So this is what makes the Indian civilization, or Bharat as we call it, very different from
Yeah.
other civilizations. So that will be there in the backdrop. And then modern development has to be embraced. Modern technology and all that has to happen. We cannot discard the past
No.
to go into the future. So
And-
we have to go into the future with the past.
I think very well articulated, and Virasat is the differentiator or the USP.
In fact, if these buildings are old and dilapidated, there are methods by which new life can be poured into these. So you can repair these and you can enhance them, improve their quality, strengthen them structurally, and repurpose these buildings and put them to alternative, adaptive reuse of these buildings. Palaces, forts, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tourism that can be encouraged here. So there are so many things that can be done with the heritage, and there is enough land for modern buildings as well.
Well, thank you, Professor Dr. PSN Rao. I think I learned a lot and it was truly enjoyable. You wear several hats, and your role as an urban planner and as an expert in real estate, I think those expertise is what we could really make use of. But I would love to invite you back to the podcast series, The Realty Show, for throwing light on even very many other issues which people would like to know. And nobody better than you to speak about certain things, not just from a point of view of authority, but you also make the complex really simple. Thank you very much, sir,
Thank
for
you
your
so much.
time.